The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss and Park stepped onto Harmony Prime for the first time. The space station was massive. Lights glowed from every surface. Thousands of aliens walked through the wide corridors, speaking in languages she had never heard. Some floated, some crawled, some moved in ways her brain could not understand. She took a deep breath. The air tasted clean, almost too clean. Nothing like the dusty mining colony where she grew up. Nothing like Earth, the planet her grandparents still called home. A tall figure approached her. The alien had lavender skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and limbs that seemed too long for its body. It wore the silver robes of an academy instructor. "You must be the human transfer," the alien said. Its voice was soft like wind through grass. "I am advisor. Welcome to Galactic Unity Academy." Bowed slightly. "Thank you for having me." 4 eyes blinked one after another. The alien seemed nervous. Noticed how it kept a careful distance from her, how its long fingers twitched when she moved too quickly. "Your species is rare here," said carefully. "We have only 3 other humans at this academy. I trust you understand the need for cultural adjustment." Kept her face calm. She had heard this before, cultural adjustment. It was a polite way of saying, act less human, move slower, smile less. Do not show your teeth. Do not look directly at prey species. Do not remind them what you are. "I understand," she said. "Relax slightly. Good, very good. Come, I will show you to your quarters." As they walked through the station, felt eyes on her from every direction. Aliens stopped their conversations to stare. Some pointed. Others moved away, pressing themselves against walls as she passed. She was used to this. Humans came from Earth, a Class 4. In galactic terms, this meant her home planet was a nightmare. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The oceans were filled with monsters. The land was covered with predators, parasites, and poisonous plants. Even the smallest creatures could kill. And humans were the species that conquered it all. They ate the predators. They survived the plagues. They built cities in deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. They crossed oceans in wooden boats and walked on their own moon before they discovered faster-than-light travel. To most species in the galaxy, humans were terrifying. Did not feel terrifying. She was 17 years old. She liked music and books and the taste of her mother's cooking. She wanted to study zenobiology and maybe see a few alien worlds before she grew old. But the galaxy did not see a teenage girl. The galaxy saw a. Her quarters were small but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a window that looked out at the stars, left her with it containing her schedule and a list of rules. Many rules were normal. No fighting, no weapons, no stealing. Some rules were clearly written for humans. Do not run in corridors. Do not raise your voice. Do not engage in physical contact without permission. Do not display aggressive body language. Report any violent thoughts to the counseling center immediately. Read the rules twice. Then she put them down and looked out the window. Her family had saved for 10 years to send her here. 10 years of extra shifts in the mines. 10 years of skipped meals and worn-out clothes. They wanted her to have a better life. They wanted her to prove that humans could succeed in the wider galaxy. She would not let them down. The next morning, she attended her first classes. The academy was truly. She sat beside creatures with scales and feathers and exoskeletons. Some breathed different gases and wore special masks. Some communicated through colors or smells or sounds beyond human hearing. The teachers were professional but distant. They called on her less than other students. When she raised her hand, they sometimes pretended not to see. At lunch, she sat alone. The dining hall was enormous, filled with long tables and hundreds of students. Different species clustered together in groups. Nobody invited her to join. She was eating a protein block when someone sat across from her. He was human. A young man, maybe 18, with short black hair and tired eyes. He wore the same academy uniform as everyone else, but something about him seemed smaller, quieter, like he was trying to take up as little space as possible. "You are Park?" he asked in Korean. It had been so long since she heard her own language from another person. Her heart ached. "Yes," she replied in the same language. "And you are?" "I have been here for 3 years." He glanced around nervously. "I wanted to warn you about some things." "Warn me." Leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Do not make waves, do not stand out, do not give them any reason to notice you." Frowned. "Why?" "Because they are afraid of us," said. "And afraid people do terrible things. If we are quiet, if we are small, if we prove we are not dangerous, they leave us alone, mostly." Looked around the dining hall. She saw what meant. In the far corner, 2 other humans sat together. A boy and a girl, both with their heads down, eating quickly, speaking to no one. They moved like prey animals, always watching, always ready to run. Something cold settled in her stomach. "Is this what they want?" she asked. "For us to be afraid?" Shook his head. "They want us to be sorry, sorry for being human, sorry for coming from us, sorry for surviving." He stood up. "I am just telling you how things are. It is easier if you accept it now." He walked away, shoulders hunched, eyes on the floor. Sat alone with her half-eaten food. Around her, aliens laughed and talked and lived their lives. None of them looked at her. None of them seemed to care. She thought about her grandmother back on Earth. A small woman with strong hands and a stronger will. She had survived wars and famines and disasters that would have broken other species. When was young, her grandmother told her stories about old Korea, about the mountains and the rivers and the people who never gave up, no matter what. "We are not a people who bow," her grandmother used to say. "We bend when we must, but we do not break, and we never forget who we are." Finished her meal. She cleaned her tray and walked to her next class with her head held high. She would not make trouble. She would not start fights. She would follow the rules and study hard and make her family proud. But she would not apologize for being human. She would not shrink herself to make others comfortable. She would not pretend to be something she was not. If the galaxy wanted to fear her, that was the galaxy's problem. Park was a daughter of Earth, a child of and she had nothing to be ashamed of. That night she lay in bed and watched the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, her planet spun through the void. A small blue world full of danger and beauty and stubborn, impossible life. She smiled and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be another day, and she was ready for whatever it would bring. 3 weeks passed at Galactic Unity Academy, learned the rhythms of station life. She attended classes, completed assignments, and kept her head down as advised. But she also watched. She listened. And slowly she began to understand how things really worked. The academy had rules, official rules written in handbooks and posted on walls. But there were other rules too, unwritten rules. Everyone knew them, but nobody spoke them aloud. At the top of everything was a student named. Was a reptilian species from a Class 2 world. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes were yellow with vertical slits. He stood taller than most students, and his family was powerful. His father owned half the shipping lanes in 3-star systems. Did not follow rules, made rules. First noticed him in the dining hall. A small alien with soft gray fur and large frightened eyes was carrying a tray of food. That was young, maybe 14 in human years. It walked carefully, trying not to bump into anyone. Stepped into its path. "What is this?" asked loudly. His voice was harsh, like stones grinding together. "A little grass eater blocking my way." The froze, its ears flattened against its skull. "I am sorry," it whispered. "I did not see you." "You did not see me," laughed. Behind him, 2 other aliens laughed too. One was a creature with clicking mandibles. The other was a huge and muscular with gray skin like stone. They were shadows. They went everywhere he went. reached out and slapped the tray from his hands. Food scattered across the floor. The flinched as if struck. "Now you see me," said. "Clean this mess, grass-eater, and do not let it happen again." The dropped to its knees and began gathering the spilled food with shaking hands. Stepped over it and walked away, his lackeys following close behind. Watched from across the hall. Her hands tightened into fists under the table. She looked at the teachers standing nearby. They had seen everything. They did nothing. One of them actually turned away, pretending to check something on a. "Do not," said a voice beside her. Turned. A human girl sat at the next table. She was older than maybe 19, with long dark hair and a face that might have been pretty if it was not so tired. Her name was Bay, had seen her around but never spoken to her. "Do not what?" asked. Glanced at retreating back. "Whatever you are thinking, do not do it." "I was not thinking anything." "Yes, you were." His voice was flat. "I know that look. I had it too when I first came here, but trust me, it is not worth it." Said nothing. She watched the finish cleaning and scurry away, still shaking. Later that day, found her in the library. The older girl sat down without asking permission and spoke quietly. His family is connected to the station council. He has never faced consequences for anything. Students who complain disappear. Not killed, she added quickly, seeing's expression. Transferred, sent home in disgrace, scholarships revoked, families punished. And the teachers allow this. Laughed bitterly. The teachers are afraid too. Everyone is afraid. That is how power works. Thought about this. What about us, the humans? "We are special cases," said. "The galaxy knows what we are capable of, so they watch us closely. Any sign of aggression, any hint of violence, and they have an excuse to remove us. Knows this. He pushes the other humans sometimes. Small things, insults, shoves in the hallway. He wants us to react. He wants proof that are dangerous animals who do not belong in civilized society. And you just accept this." His eyes went hard. "I accept reality. I have 1 year left before graduation. 1 year and I can leave this place and never come back. I will not throw that away for pride." She stood up to leave, then paused. "Has noticed you," she said. "The new human who does not flinch. Be careful, he will test you. And if you fail that test, you lose everything." That night sat in her quarters and thought about what said. She understood the logic. Keep your head down, survive, graduate, leave. But something about it felt wrong. She opened her and began reading. Not schoolwork, history, Earth history. She read about her ancestors, the people of Korea who had survived invasions and occupations and wars, the people who rebuilt their nation again and again, no matter how many times it was torn apart, the people who turned a peninsula of mountains and rice fields into a technological power that reached the stars. She read about humanity as a whole, the ice ages they endured, the plagues they survived, the wars they fought against each other, and the peace they finally built. The day they launched their first ship beyond the solar system and discovered they were not alone in the universe. And she read about how the galaxy reacted to that discovery. Fear, the other species felt fear. Here was a race that evolved on a planet trying to kill them every single day. A race that ate the flesh of other creatures, that ran for pleasure, that swam in acid oceans and climbed mountains for fun. A race that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times but always came back stronger. The galaxy looked at humans and saw monsters. So they made rules. Humans could join galactic society, but only if they proved they were safe. Only if they acted gentle and quiet and sorry for existing. Only if they pretended to be something they were not. Closed the. She was not ashamed of what humanity had survived. She was proud. Her species had faced every horror the universe could throw at them and come out the other side. They had earned their place among the stars. Why should she apologize for that? She thought about the on its knees, picking up scattered food. She thought about with his hunched shoulders and tired eyes. She thought about counting the days until she could escape. They were all waiting, waiting for someone else to change things, waiting for permission to stand up. Made a decision. She would not start trouble. She would not throw the first punch. She would follow the rules exactly as they were written. But if trouble came to her, she would not run. She would not bow. She would not pretend to be weak. She was Park, daughter of Earth, child of the. And she was done apologizing. The trouble started small. A shoulder bump in the hallway. Was walking to class when appeared from nowhere and slammed into her. She stumbled but kept her feet. "Watch where you walk," Ape hissed. Looked at him calmly. "You walked into me." His yellow eyes narrowed. Behind him, his two lackeys shifted nervously. Most students would have apologized immediately. Most students would have looked away. Did neither. For a long moment they stood there, then laughed, a cold sound like cracking ice. "Bold," he said. "We will see how long that lasts." He walked away, but knew it was not over. The next week brought more incidents. Her went missing from her desk. Her lunch tray was knocked from her hands by someone who vanished into the crowd. Her name appeared on a bathroom wall beside crude drawings and ugly words. She reported nothing. She complained to no one. She simply cleaned up each mess and continued with her day. This seemed to frustrate. He wanted her to cry. He wanted her to rage. He wanted her to give him an excuse. She gave him nothing. Then came the day in advanced zenobiology. The classroom was arranged in a half-circle, with the instructor's podium at the center. 20 students from different species sat at their desks ready. The instructor was a like advisor, though older and more tired. Today's lesson was about predator-prey relationships across different planetary ecosystems. On most worlds, the instructor explained, predator species eventually reach a balance with prey species. The predators cannot become too numerous or they will exhaust their food supply. This creates stable ecosystems over time. Raised his hand. The instructor called on him with obvious nervousness. "What about?" asked. His voice was casual, but his eyes found across the room. "I heard that predators from those planets never stop hunting. They kill for pleasure, not just food." Several students turned to look at. She kept her face still. The instructor cleared their throat. "That is an oversimplification. Ecosystems are certainly more violent, but they still follow natural laws. Predators do not kill without reason." "But humans do," pressed. "I read that humans killed millions of their own kind. They had wars that destroyed entire cities. They invented weapons that could end all life on their planet." He smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Is that not true?" The instructor looked desperately at, clearly hoping she would stay silent. She did not. "It is true," said. Her voice was calm and clear. Every head in the room turned toward her. "Humans have fought wars. We have killed each other in terrible numbers. We have built weapons that could destroy our world." Smile widened. He thought he had won. "But that is not the whole story," continued. "Yes, we made those weapons. We also chose not to use them. We had the power to end everything and we stopped ourselves. We learned. We grew. We built peace from the ashes of war." She looked directly at. "That is what makes humans different, not that we are violent. Most species are violent. What makes us different is that we choose when to be violent and when to be gentle. We are not slaves to our instincts. We decide what we want to be." The classroom was silent. Smile had disappeared. His scales seemed to darken, a sign of anger in biology. His lackeys shifted uncomfortably. "Pretty words," said slowly. "But I think you are lying. I think humans are just animals pretending to be civilized. I think if someone pushed hard enough, the real human would come out." "You are welcome to your opinion," said. "It is not an opinion," stood up from his desk. "It is a fact, and I will prove it." He reached into his belt and pulled out a knife. The blade was about 15 centimeters long, curved and sharp. The handle was wrapped in dark leather and decorated with jewels. It was an honor knife, traditionally carried by members of noble families. Several students screamed. Others dove under their desks. The instructor backed against the wall, 4 eyes wide with terror. Held the knife loosely, almost casually. He walked towards desk with slow, deliberate steps. "On my world," he said, "we settle disputes with blood. When someone insults us honor, we have the right to challenge them. It is our custom, our law." "This is not your world," said. She had not moved from her seat. "No, but you are in my academy," stopped in front of her desk. The knife gleamed under the classroom lights. "I am giving you a choice, ape. Apologize for your disrespect. Get on your knees and beg for my forgiveness. Do this and I will let you live." He pointed the blade at her face. "Refuse, and I will show everyone what human blood looks like." The room was frozen. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Looked at the knife. Then she looked at its face. She saw the cruelty there, the absolute certainty that he had won, the belief that she was just another weak creature who would break under pressure. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Park smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was not a nervous smile. It was the smile of a creature whose ancestors had survived ice ages and plagues and predators and wars. The smile of a species that had looked into the abyss again and again and never blinked. It was the smile of a... Hesitated. Something in that smile was wrong. Something in her eyes made ancient instincts scream warnings in his brain. For the first time in his life, he felt like prey. "You want me to be afraid," said softly. "You want me to cry and beg and prove that humans are animals." She tilted her head slightly. "But I am not afraid. Do you want to know why?" She leaned forward and her smile widened. "Because on my world, we call that little thing a letter opener." His hand trembled. The knife suddenly felt very small. And in that classroom, surrounded by terrified aliens, the human girl showed no fear at all. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Stood with his knife pointed at its face. Sat in her chair, still smiling that terrible smile. The other students watched with wide eyes, afraid to breathe, afraid to draw attention to themselves. Then made his decision. He lunged. That was fast. His species had evolved as ambush predators, capable of explosive bursts of speed. The knife swept towards throat in a silver arc. But was faster. She moved before his arm completed its swing. To the watching students, she seemed to blur. One moment she was sitting. The next moment she was standing beside, her hand wrapped around his wrist. His eyes went wide. He tried to pull away, but her grip was iron. Humans evolved on a world where gravity was 3 times stronger than his. Every day of his life, she had carried 3 times the weight that carried. Her muscles, her bones, her entire body had been built to survive crushing forces that would break other species. To her, strength was nothing. "Let go," shouted. He tried to slash at her with his other hand, claws extended. Shifted her weight and twisted. It was a simple movement, something human children learned in basic self-defense classes. She applied pressure to the nerve cluster in his wrist while pulling his arm in a direction it was not meant to go. Screamed. His fingers opened automatically, and the knife clattered to the floor. Before he could react, spun him around and forced him to his knees. She held his arm behind his back at an angle that would break it if she applied just a little more pressure. The entire exchange had taken less than 3 seconds. The classroom was absolutely silent. Students stared in shock. The instructor had pressed himself so hard against the wall that he seemed to be trying to phase through it. Held in place with one hand. With the other, she reached down and picked up the knife. She examined it casually, turning it over in her fingers. "Nice craftsmanship," she said conversationally. "Good balance, sharp edge." She looked down at. "On Earth, we have knives like this. We use them to cut vegetables." Made a sound somewhere between a growl and a whimper. He tried to struggle, but every movement sent pain shooting through his arm. "My species invented 1,000 ways to kill each other before we invented writing," said softly. "We have been fighting and dying and surviving for longer than your species has existed. We learned to kill with rocks and sticks and our bare hands. We learned to turn anything into a weapon." She leaned down until her mouth was near his ear. "You never had a chance." She released his arm and stepped back, scrambled away from her on all fours. His scales had gone pale, almost white. His yellow eyes were huge with terror. He bumped into his lackeys, who were frozen in place, too afraid to move. Walked to the instructor's desk and placed the knife gently on its surface. Then she turned to face the room. "I did not start this fight," she said clearly. "I did not draw a weapon. I did not threaten anyone. I defended myself using minimum necessary force. No one is seriously harmed." She looked at the instructor. "I believe that is within the rules." The instructor opened and closed his mouth several times. No words came out. Returned to her seat and sat down as if nothing had happened. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then slowly the other students began to move. They looked at each other, looked at still huddled on the floor. Something had changed. Everyone could feel it. Slackies finally helped him to his feet. His arm hung at an odd angle, probably sprained. He looked at with an expression she could not quite read. Fear, certainly, but also something else. Confusion, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. "This is not over," he said, but his voice shook. "It is over if you want it to be over," replied calmly. "I have no desire to hurt you. I never did. All I want is to study and learn and live my life in peace. But I will not apologize for being human. I will not pretend to be weak. And I will not allow anyone to threaten me." She held his gaze. "The choice is yours. We can be enemies and you can keep pushing until one of us is destroyed. Or we can be nothing to each other and you can find someone else to bully." Said nothing. He turned and limped out of the classroom, his lackeys following close behind. The door closed behind them. Let out a slow breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, hidden under her desk. The adrenaline was still pumping through her system, making her heart race. She had not wanted this. She had not planned it, but she did not regret it. Someone laughed. Looked up, across the room, was smiling. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. Beside him, Bay was staring at with an expression of pure wonder. Other students were whispering now. A with gray fur was actually bouncing in its seat, ears perked up with excitement. A pair of small crystalline beings were flashing colors at each other, their equivalent of excited chatter. The instructor finally found his voice. Class is dismissed for today," he said weakly. "Everyone please return to your quarters." Students began filing out, but many of them passed close to his desk. They did not speak to her, but they looked at her differently now. Not with fear, with something closer to respect. One student, a young that recognized as the one had bullied in the dining hall, stopped beside her desk. "Thank you," it whispered. Then it hurried away before she could respond. Sat alone in the empty classroom for a long time. She thought about what she had done and what would happen next. She had broken no rules, but she had broken something else. The unwritten agreement that humans would always back down. The silent understanding that would pretend to be tame. There would be consequences, she was sure of it. But looking at the knife still sitting on the instructor's desk, she found that she did not care. She had shown them who she was, not a monster, not a victim, just a human being who refused to be afraid. And that, she thought, was worth whatever came next. The aftermath came quickly. Within an hour of the incident, was summoned to the Academy Administration Center. She walked through corridors filled with whispers. News traveled fast on Harmony Prime. Everyone knew what had happened in the zenobiology classroom. Everyone had an opinion. The administration center was a grand hall with a high ceiling and walls covered in flags from 100 different worlds. Behind a long curved desk sat 7 figures, the Academy Council, 4 aliens of different species, 2 humans, and 1 synthetic being that served as a neutral arbiter. And standing to one side, his arm in a medical brace, beside him stood 2 tall and expensive robes. His parents guessed. They looked at her with cold hatred. "Park," the synthetic arbiter said. Its voice was flat, without emotion. "You have been summoned to address an incident that occurred today in the advanced zenobiology classroom. Of House has accused you of assault." "Stood straight, I understand." "We will review the recorded footage," the arbiter continued. "However, the accusers have requested the opportunity to speak first." His father stepped forward. He was larger than his son, with darker scales and a deep scar across one eye. His voice boomed through the hall. "This human attacked my son without provocation," he declared. "She used her strength to injure him and humiliate him in front of his peers. This is exactly the kind of violence we were warned about when humans were admitted to this academy. She is dangerous. She must be expelled immediately and banned from all Galactic Unity institutions." Several council members nodded. One of them, a nervous-looking, was already reaching for his voting pad. Then one of the human council members spoke. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes. His nameplate read, "Ambassador Han." "With respect," Ambassador Han said, "I believe we should view the footage before making any decisions." His father scowled. "The footage will show exactly what I described, a savage human attacking a civilized." "Then you have nothing to fear from watching it," Ambassador Han said calmly. The arbiter nodded and activated a holographic display. The classroom appeared in the air above the council desk. Every member watched as the scene played out. They saw pull his knife. They saw him threaten. They saw him lunge at her with clear intent to harm. And they saw disarm him in seconds, using precise, controlled movements. No wild strikes, no unnecessary violence, just efficient defense that ended the threat without causing serious injury. When the footage ended, the hall was silent. His father's face had gone a strange color. His son would not meet anyone's eyes. Ambassador Han leaned forward. "The footage is clear. Drew a weapon and attacked a fellow student. Defended herself using minimum necessary force. Under Academy rules and under Galactic Unity law, she committed no offense." "She injured my son," his father shouted. "Your son attempted to murder another student," Ambassador Han replied. "A sprained wrist seems like a light consequence." The council debated for nearly an hour. His family argued for his expulsion. Ambassador Han and his allies argued for justice. In the end, the arbiter called for a vote. The result, 5-2 in his favor. Was suspended for 1 full academic year. His honor knife was confiscated. His family's complaints were officially noted but dismissed. Was cleared of all charges. As she left the administration center, she passed and his family. His father glared at her with undisguised hatred. Himself looked smaller somehow, diminished. But did not gloat. She did not smile. She simply nodded politely and walked away. Outside, she found a crowd waiting for her. Was there, standing tall for the first time since she had known him. Was there, her eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. And behind them, dozens of other students, and an species did not even recognize. They began to applaud. Felt heat rise to her face. "Please," she said, "I did not do anything special. I just refused to be a victim." "That is special," said. "That is the most special thing any of us has ever seen." Over the following days, everything changed. The other human students began walking with their heads up, started speaking in class, sharing his thoughts without fear, asked to teach her some basic defense techniques, and soon a small group was meeting every evening to practice together. Other species joined them. prey species who had spent their whole lives being pushed around, smaller students who had learned to accept abuse as normal. They all wanted to learn what new, not how to fight, but how to refuse to be afraid. The dining hall looked different now. The old hierarchy was crumbling. Students sat together in mixed groups. The who had been bullied now had friends from 6 different species. Former lackeys, abandoned by their leader, had begun eating alone. One afternoon, the young who had thanked after the incident found her in the library. It was carrying a small box. "I wanted to give you something," they said shyly. "It is a flower from it only blooms once every 10 years. My family sent it to me for luck." It opened the box, revealing a delicate purple blossom. "I want you to have it." Was touched. "I cannot take something so precious." "You can," they insisted. "You gave me something more precious. You showed me that being small does not mean being helpless. That changed my life." It pressed the box into her hands. "Please." Accepted the gift. She placed it carefully in her quarters, where it glowed softly in the starlight. Days turned into weeks. The academy slowly became a different place. Not perfect. There would always be bullies, always be those who used power to hurt others. But the old rules were broken. The old fear was fading. One evening, a young alien stopped in the corridor. It was a child, maybe 8 or 9 in human years, with wide, curious eyes and blue-green skin. "Excuse me," the child said. "Are you the human everyone talks about?" Smiled. "I suppose I am." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." The child fidgeted nervously. "Why do they call your planet it sounds scary?" Knelt down to the child's level. She thought about the question for a moment. "Because everything on my planet tried to kill us," she said honestly. "The weather was dangerous. The animals were dangerous. Even the plants could hurt you. Every day was a fight to survive." The child shivered. "That sounds terrible." "It was hard," agreed. "But it made us strong. It taught us to never give up no matter what. And it taught us something else too," she smiled gently. "It taught us that surviving is not enough. We had to learn to live, to build, to love, to take care of each other." She stood up and looked out the corridor window at the stars. "We are called because we came from death, but we chose life. Every single day we chose to be more than just survivors. We chose to be kind. We chose to be gentle. We chose to build a better world for everyone, not just ourselves." The child looked up at her with something like wonder. "So you are not monsters?" Laughed softly. "No, we are not monsters. We are just people who learned the most important lesson the universe can teach." She put a hand on the child's shoulder. "The strongest thing you can be is kind. Remember that." The child nodded slowly. Then it smiled and ran off to join its friends. Watched it go. She thought about her grandmother back on Earth, about her parents in the mining colony, about all the humans scattered across the galaxy, trying to find their place among the stars. They were not monsters. They were not animals. They were survivors who had chosen to be gentle, warriors who had chosen peace, who had chosen life. And now, finally, the galaxy was beginning to understand. Walked back to her quarters with a light heart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new chances to prove what humanity could be. She was ready for all of it. Because she was Park, daughter of Earth, child of the. And she had nothing left to prove to anyone but herself.